Good evening and welcome. Before we begin, and just a reminder to councillors, presenters, delegates, that we are working with an interim streaming system, and we're operating on one microphone. So when you are, and I have to remember this as well, when you're speaking, please project your voice as loud as possible. So I'd like to call this council meeting to order. Please remain standing if you're able. For the land acknowledgement, a moment of silent reflection, and the singing of O Canada. We acknowledge that Stratford is positioned on the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the neutral Indo-Waterans peoples. As we gather, we are reminded that the city of Stratford is situated on treaty land that is steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples today. We acknowledge that Stratford is situated on land that was shared between the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the neutral Indo-Waterans peoples. We are grateful to have the opportunity to live, work, and play on this land. Thank you. Please be seated. Please allow me to share the Respect in Stratford's statement. The Corporation of the City of Stratford is committed to providing quality service to all members of the public, council, and our employees. Our goal is to promote a safe, healthy, respectful, inclusive, and positive environment. We have a responsibility to treat people with respect and creating safe and respectful spaces. It is the city's expectation that all present will be respectful. Madam Clerk, the meeting is yours.
Through you, your worship. Item 2 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Are there any declarations? And if so, please state the general nature thereof.
Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. Through the mayor, item 5.1, the committee of the whole in camera session, and specifically item 4.1 underneath that.
Thank you. Any other items of declaration? Seeing none. Next item.
Item 3 is adoption of the minutes, and there is a motion that the minutes of the regular meeting of council dated January 26 be adopted as printed.
By Councillor Niger, seconded by Councillor Henderson. Any comments or questions on those minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Item 4 is adoption of the addenda, and earlier today an addenda was circulated to add delegations and an attachment to the consent agenda. And there is a motion that the addenda to the regular agenda of council and standing committees dated February 9th be added to the agenda as printed.
Moved by Councillor Burback, seconded by Councillor Bean. Any discussion? All question, all in favor? Opposed if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Item 5 is the report of the Committee of the Whole in camera session, and item 5.1. Just prior to today's regular council meeting, an in-camera session was held to consider the following items. Item 4.1, confidential report of the Chief Administrative Officer with respect to the potential purchase of property for municipal purposes, CM-26-04. And that was considered under the proposed or pending acquisition or disposal of land by the municipality exemption of the Municipal Act. And item 5.1, confidential report of the city clerk with respect to an appointment to the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee to fill a vacancy, CM-26-03. And that was considered under the personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal employees or local board employees. For item 4.1, a confidential report of the Chief Administrative Officer was received and no direction was given. For item 5.1, a confidential report of the city clerk along with personal matters about identifiable individuals were considered and no direction was given for item 5.1.
Thank you.
Moving to item 6, hearings of deputations and presentations. There's none scheduled under this section. So moving to item 7, orders of the day. Item 7.1 is a recommendation report for lands known as 315 and 317 Huron Street for official plan amendment application OPA 1-25 and zoning bylaw amendment application Z0924. And our intermediate planner has a presentation.
Bridget, are you coming forward?
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking of deletions first.
Well, then you come forward first. Walk in whenever you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mayor Ritzman. Good evening, council, members of staff, and the public here in attendance tonight. I'll be representing the city's planning division on the subject application for the lands municipally known as 315 and 317 Huron Street.
Just keep going, yeah. We're loading it right now.
So an official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application were submitted for both subject properties. The official plan amendment application is to add a site-specific policy to permit increased density on the site. And the zoning bylaw amendment application proposes to change the zoning of the subject lands from a residential second R2 1 density to a site-specific residential 5th density R51-28. And this change aims to permit the use of apartment buildings and requests site-specific provisions, which include reduced lot area, building setbacks, landscaped open space, and visitor parking requirements. The requested provisions are to facilitate the development of 2 6-unit apartment buildings on the property. Is that okay next time? Formerly occupied by a semi-detached dwelling, the lands are now vacant and exist as separate properties after being severed in 2024. I'll speak to this severance matter at the end of my presentation about how the past consent application has impacted planning recommendation as it relates to site plan control. Up on the screen, we just have a conceptual rendering of the proposal. And so, as mentioned, the properties used to contain a semi-detached dwelling, which is, has been removed in 2024. Currently, the site is now vacant. The properties are designated residential area in the city of Stratford's official plan, which permit a variety of residential uses, including apartment buildings. And as mentioned, the property is currently zoned R21 in the city of Stratford zoning bylaw. Notice of the applications was circulated to all required agencies under the Planning Act. Updated comments received upon completion of the public meeting are included in planning's report. The city's engineering division has expressed concerns about overland flooding on the site, which is included in planning recommendation as an item to be addressed. The public meeting for these applications was held on April 14th of last year. Concerns raised as part of that public meeting process have been included and addressed in the recommendation report. I can speak to any of these issues further at the end of my presentation should council have any questions, but they are included in planning's recommendation. So now to move on to planning's analysis, the provincial planning statement. The subject proposal is consistent with the provincial planning statement by diversifying housing options within the city, contributing to a complete community efficiently using land, resources, and infrastructure and public service facilities. As noted, the subject application is designated residential area in the City of Stratford's official plan. The goals and objectives of residential areas are to maintain essential neighborhood qualities and to ensure intensification is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. The subject proposal maintains essential neighborhood qualities through appropriate setbacks, building height, and site design that will limit negative impacts on neighboring properties. The scale of the proposed development is compatible with neighboring properties, and though there is a significant increase in density, it is considered appropriate as all aspects of a well-functioning site can be provided. However, planning does maintain concerns regarding the proposal's building frontage and the potential impact of the impervious surfacing in the rear yard. As such, planning is recommending that the applicant enter into a development agreement with the city to address these outstanding issues and to ensure that there will be no negative impacts to the surrounding neighborhood. Subject to the approval of this development agreement, the application is considered to conform to the City of Stratford's official plan. The following site-specific zoning provisions were requested as part of this application. That is a minimum lot area for an apartment dwelling of 565 square meters, a minimum front yard depth of 2.5 meters, a minimum interior side yard width of 2.2 meters, a minimum landscape open space of 14%, a maximum density of 106 units per net hectare, and a minimum of 1 visitor parking space each for each building. An analysis of each requested provision is included in a planning report. Planning does not have any concerns with the requested provisions, provided the aforementioned development agreement addresses the drainage concerns raised by the city's engineering division related to the reduced landscape open space requirements. And so this I'll speak quickly to the development agreement that I've mentioned several times. As per the requirements of the Planning Act, site plan control cannot be applied to developments consisting of 10 dwelling units or less. As the subject development consists of 2 apartment dwellings, each containing 6 dwelling units, the subject lands are technically exempt from site plan approval. This relates back to the consent application that was approved by the city in 2023 and finalized in 2024. Should the lands not have been severed, we'd be dealing with a property containing 12 units that would require site plan control. However, again, because that severance was completed by prior property owners, the property was then subsequently sold to the new property owners, and we're dealing with this application today. Site plan control does not apply to the subject proposal. For this reason, planning staff are requesting that a development agreement be required by the city to satisfy outstanding concerns typically addressed during the site plan stage. As such, it is recommended that the requested zoning bylaw be approved in principle and that the passing of the bylaw amendment be deferred until or pending the approval and registration of the development agreement. The development agreement will be implemented as part of a future right-of-way consent application required to facilitate shared access to the lands. So ultimately, the implementation tool that city planning recommended is through a future consent application that will be needed to have a shared right-of-way to enter the subject lands. As part of this application or that consent right-of-way application, the city will be imposing this development agreement to satisfy the concerns associated with the subject proposal. As such, City of Stratford Planning is recommending that the application for official plan amendment OPA 1/25 be approved for the following reasons, and that the request is consistent with the provincial planning statement in conformance with the City of Stratford's official plan. The request constitutes sound land use planning and is appropriate for the development of the lands, and that public comments have been received, reviewed comprehensively, and appropriately addressed. and that application for zoning bylaw amendment Z0924 be approved in principle for the following reasons: that the request is consistent with the provincial planning statement and conforms with the City of Stratford's official plan, that the request constitutes sound land use planning and is appropriate for the development of the lands, and that public comments have been received, reviewed comprehensively, and appropriately addressed. And that the implementing zoning bylaw amendment be forwarded to City Council for approval once the applicant has entered into a development agreement as a condition of consent application under section 53 of the Planning Act to address any outstanding concerns such as, but not limited to, drainage, landscaping, fencing, and urban design to the satisfaction of the manager of planning, and that pursuant to section 3417 of the Planning Act, that no further notice be required. Thank you. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know there are some delegations as well as the applicants scheduled to speak. I will be around after those as well to answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you. Questions, Councillor McCabe?
Through the chair, could you just lay out for me the difference? If this was prior to the consent to sever these two properties, what would have had to be done by the developer if it was one property, and the option here, which is what kind of restrictions do we have as far as the development agreement?
Certainly, for the mayor, thank you for the question, Councilor McCabe. Ultimately, site plan control applies to a number of different properties under the city site plan control bylaw, but namely, in this case, apartment buildings, provided that they are greater than 10 units. In the case of where site plan control would apply, that would allow the city to undergo site plan control on the property, to have an extensive review of whether it be the drainage, it be the landscaping, it be the elevation drawings, it be the specific accessibility of entrances. The site plan control process is a comprehensive, widespread process initiated by the city, essentially where elevation, grading, servicing, all sorts of plans and studies are received by the applicant, reviewed by the city as well as external agencies, and then ultimately approved through a site plan agreement. There's usually the collection of securities as part of said agreement to ensure it's 50% of what an estimated cost to ensure that certain works are to be conducted as per the agreement. But essentially that agreement is registered on title for the property, and it's a legally binding agreement to ensure that the developer undertakes the action as directed, or sorry, not as directed, but certainly undertakes the work as proposed to ensure that the work sets that take place on the property meet all standards of the city of Stratford, whether again that be engineering, planning, building, fire. It's a comprehensive process that gets reviewed by all members of the city, and then is ultimately registered on title as a commitment. So the development agreement is an alternative that we are exploring in this case and recommending because we don't have that option for site plan approval. It's a little bit less strict it's a little less descriptive as far as what we can include in this development agreement, which is why I was careful with the wording and the recommendation to highlight some of the concerns that we have expressed to have those addressed. But it ultimately won't function as exactly like a site plan agreement. The main target of this development agreement is to identify those specific concerns rather than going through a process and potentially completely revamping the application. It's specifically highlighted to address those concerns that have been addressed through the zoning and official plan amendment process, and to ensure the city has the assurances, let's say in the case of landscaping or drainage, that there are going to be no immediate impacts or negative impacts to the neighborhood. And it's to have that on title, essentially agreed to by the developer and the city to ensure that all parties are confident that in the results.
Well, just to be clear, so this will come back again to us here or not?
Through the mayor, good question. So the development agreement itself is not planned to come to City of Stratford or to council as far as a review. The plan is for that to be undertaken by staff. We're hoping that the applicant will submit a development agreement. There will likely be some back and forth to ensure that it meets all requirements, and then is registered on title. However, the passing of the bylaw will return to council with a report from staff member, essentially explaining what was included in the development agreement, why planning staff are, in a position to now recommend approval based on as an update to tonight's report, and then hopefully ultimately recommend approval, finalizing passing of the bylaw at that stage.
Councilor Beck.
Thank you, through the chair. I understand what you're saying, and I understand you partially answered my question, asking Kate's question. But I'm struggling a little bit with the timing on this. I just, because it's an application that doesn't seem like there's a number of red flags that will be addressed, but I don't understand why we wouldn't go back to the developer and ask them to fix said issues before we have asked to approve a bylaw amendments.
Through the mayor, thank you for the question, Councilor Burbank. Also, ultimately, that is something that planning considered. Typically at this stage, and when we do have site plan control, it's much easier to say, well, there may be drainage issues, however, those will be rectified. So that's why we were left with a little bit of a question here is how do we want to address this? Ultimately, the decision was made to pursue the current stance of approving in principle the zoning on the basis that the development agreement will be dealt with after. As one, to provide some assurances to the developer. Ultimately, there are costs associated with providing an application. We're hoping to move this along. This application has been, I don't want to say on hold, but essentially it's been in the works for at least the last year, given that the public meeting was in April. So if there is an approval in principle, this provides the opportunity for a developer to continue working on the application, knowing that City Council has at least is on the same page with the direction of the site, as well as zoning really deals with the core, it deals with setbacks, deals with height. However, technical studies like with stormwater management or the urban design of the site can proceed afterwards the zoning is solidified. So essentially we don't want the zoning of the property to be a holdback until, because it doesn't need to prevent those issues from being dealt with. Zoning can be approved in principle to move this application forward, but at the same time not fully passed until staff are satisfied that those issues are addressed. Ultimately, we are left in a scenario where, as you're saying, those issues could be dealt with from the applicant standpoint and returned to council for a decision. I think planning would have no concerns with that as well. However, it's ultimately the developers are in an, or the applicants are in an the applicants are in the position where they would have liked this to return to council with a recommendation. And so at that point, staff are obligated to provide a recommendation, which is what has resulted with us here today. And based on the fact that we were coming forward with a recommendation, we felt it was in the best interest of both the applicant and the city to recommend approval in principle. However, knowing that some of those concerns will be addressed before the ultimate passing of the plan.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson.
You're the mayor. So that's concerning because somebody could build like a 9-unit apartment and not have to go through all that site plan control. I just want to ask you a question. So if I was building a 3-story house, do I have to go through the site control? Like more than he would?
No, so through the mayor, thank you for the question, Councilor Anderson. So site plan control only applies to this is not the technical terminology, but essentially larger developments. So that would be your apartment buildings, that would be your commercial buildings, that would be your institutional uses. Single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, your average your average townhouse dwelling, anything that's under less than 10 units. So in case, as you're talking about, even if it's 3 stories, even if it's 9 units, those do not apply under site plan control, and therefore you wouldn't have to follow those requirements. It was a provincial decision. I'm blanking on the exact year, but within the last 5 to 7 years, that it was a provincial decision. Typically, any of apartment building would require site plan control. It was a provincial decision to remove that requirement in the effort to facilitate development and encourage ultimately reduce timelines associated with providing housing. But so to answer your question, if you were looking at a single detached home, anything under 10 units, you wouldn't be required to undergo site plan approvals. There are some conditions if you're within a prescribed area, which is you're close to a railway or a regulated area. There are some technicalities. So each application is ultimately reviewed independently. But in your case, in your hypothetical, you would not require site.
So just to follow up to there, so I just want to make sure I've got it clear in my head. Do they still have to follow the regulations, like making sure that they're not causing flooding into the neighbors and stuff like that?
Through the mayor, yes. And so They ultimately are required, however, we don't want to recommend approval of a property where the engineer, our city's engineering division foresees those concerns. It's one thing to deal with those concerns once they happen, that's not ideal, and so we're usually site plan control is one way to ensure that those concerns don't happen. Ever or before they happen, which is why we're instituting or we're hoping to institute this recommendation where that development agreement be required prior to passing the zoning bylaw. If we feel that it will uphold the same requirements as the site plan approval would require, technically under a different instrument.
So if the developer decided that they weren't gonna do that, can we deny this?
Through the mayor, I might ask for clarification that the developer decided they don't want to undergo the development agreement or they don't want to undergo the specific.
Or follow the rules.
Yeah, ultimately, it's a bit of a gray area, like the city's engineering policies would still apply. Hypothetically, if any homeowner, if they were to conduct some sort of grading in their backyard that led to flooding, there would be other avenues that the city could have that addressed, and potentially resolve the issue. However, those issues would have had to have already happened for the city to potentially get involved, let's say, right? That would only be, it would be brought to the city's attention once that problem has already happened. So in this case, yes, if the applicant was not in favor of adopting this recommendation of upholding a development agreement as a requirement, they may not be held to the same standard that the city's engineering division would be looking for. And that again, that's why the city's engineering division has expressed that there may be some overland flood control issues with the current plan as proposed, which is why they're hoping to have that addressed to make sure that there are certainly no flooding issues if development is actually to take place as proposed.
Just to follow again. But can we deny it if they're not following our engineers' recommendations?
Through the mayor, yes, ultimately council can go in a number of different directions with this. If the engineering division is not satisfied, let's say the staff recommendation is passed, and then a development agreement is a condition, and then the engineering division is not satisfied, staff will not bring this back to council to pass the bylaw. Should council wish to go in a different direction, I suppose, yes, denial would be an option to ensure as well that certain concerns are taken care of. Ultimately, there's some flexibility in how council wants to deal with this and make a decision. Again, ultimately, it was planning's rationale and intent to have this file move forward was with as well as implementing those safeguards to ensure that city requirements are met prior to any development or passing the
100%.
Other comments, questions? I know Mr. Burnett will be here later on after our presentations to follow up with any other questions that you might have. Seeing none, then thank you, Burnett. And I believe we have a motion to hear.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. So as noted on the agenda, there is a motion that Aaliyah Richards of Zelenka Priamo Limited be heard, along with the addendum delegations. So that would be David K. Messer and Rick Broadhagen.
So thank you. We'll invite Ms. Richards and then we'll follow Ms. Richards with Mr. Messer and then Mr. Broadhagen. Well, as well.
Thank you. Will I have people in the presentation or do I just point like Alex?
Oh, I'm sorry. Moved by Councilor Back, thank you. It is seconded by Councilor McCaig. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff, and members of the public. My name is Aaliyah Richards, and I'm a planning consultant from Zelenka Priamo Limited. I'm pleased to be here this evening representing the property owner and local developer, OA Developments, for this OPA ZBA application at 315 and 317 Huron Street. I'd like to start by thanking staff, particularly Alexander, for his efforts in processing this application and working with us over the last several months to get to this stage of the process. We have reviewed the staff report, are in agreement with the staff recommendation for approval, and are hopeful that council will endorse this application in principle today. I prepared a short visual presentation to go over some of the aspects of this site design in detail. My apologies if there are some repetition between mine and Alex's presentation. As noted in the staff report, this proposal is a good example of moderate residential intensification that can be achieved in existing built-up areas, which ultimately promotes the efficient use of land, resources, infrastructure, and public service facilities. This location is optimal for intensification, considering the site's location on a mixed-use arterial corridor, connecting the commercial area to the northwest of the site to the downtown of Stratford. This proposal is in alignment with the provincial objectives to direct residential intensification to higher order streets in established built-up areas. Future residents of this development have convenient access to commercial uses, recreational opportunities, and transit within walking distance of the site, thereby promoting active and sustainable modes of transportation. All aspects of this proposal, including the building design, entrance locations, private amenity spaces, and parking, are deliberate in ensuring efficient use of land and are responsive to the surrounding area and built forms. Private amenity spaces in the form of balconies and direct access to the lower level units support an active relationship with the public realm and provide opportunities for passive observation to support pedestrian comfort and safety along Huron Street. Huron Street is located on the left-hand side of the screen with the rear yard at the right. Each building contains 6 two-bedroom units with private amenity spaces in the form of balconies in the front and rear yard to keep eyes on the street and in the parking area at the rear of the lot. One barrier-free space will be provided for each of the buildings, and options for barrier-free access to the buildings will be explored through the detailed design of this development. Windows and balcony locations have been strategically placed to limit views and preserve privacy for abutting lots. Additionally, a generous rear yard setback of almost 19 meters is provided from the rear lot line to the building in an effort to further preserve privacy. As noted in the staff report, the proposed development is supported by all levels of current land use planning policies, which encourage residential intensification, the diversity and mix of housing options, efficient compact development that helps to meet the needs of the current and future residents of the city of Stratford. A future consent application will be required to establish easements for the dual access driveway and stormwater management of the site. A fulsome review of the detailed site design in relation to the landscaping, fencing, and building design will occur through the consent process. I'd like to emphasize that the character of the Huron Street corridor is not easily defined, given that it is comprised of a wide variety of architectural styles, forms, and intensities. Commercial uses, new multi-unit residential development are also present in more contemporary and modern styles along the corridor. The diversity of architectural styles found along Huron Street adds to the unique character of this area. The proposed development intends to uphold the existing variety and mix of styles found along the Huron Street corridor, in addition to the contemporary and multi-unit buildings and site design. As stated in the staff report, the proposal maintains essential neighborhood qualities through appropriate setbacks, building height, landscaping, scale, and overall site design. The subject site is well located for the proposed development and will enhance the pedestrian realm, is consistent and responsive to the character of the surrounding area without any significant undue impacts. I'd like to acknowledge the stormwater management questions that we've gotten about this site, and the developer that I'm representing is more than willing to go through this process with the development agreement to establish all of the specifics of that and ensure that there are no adverse matters related to that aspect of this development. As outlined in staff's planning report and our own planning report submitted with this application, the professional opinion is that this application is appropriate. Provides appropriate housing opportunities along higher order streets and corridors. And is in alignment with provincial and local municipal planning objectives to provide additional housing in these areas. And once again, a fulsome review of the specific design details will occur through a consent application. I appreciate your time and attention this evening, and I'm available to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for the presentations. Questions from council at this time? Councilor Burbank, go ahead, please.
Thank you through the chair. Yeah, I'm just curious, you were talking about the stormwater management, that being a concern. Do you have any ideas on what might possibly be used to mitigate some of those issues? Like the impermeable surfaces seem to be a major part of this application.
Yeah.
As there consideration to use anything else or to adjust their layout possibly to address those issues?
So we've actually already discussed this matter with our engineers on this project. With the comments that came out in this report, those were a little new in comparison to the comments that we received in November of 2025. The general sentiment was that our stormwater management design was reasonable with appropriate maintenance of the system. But with the new comments that has come from the engineering division, we have no issues with what they're proposing. So it was increased grading of the site to make sure that ponding doesn't occur, and potentially extending the retaining wall so that we can mitigate any potential flooding on. So that's what we've discussed with our engineers on this project, and we're in agreement to those recommendations.
Anything further? Councilor Henderson.
To the mayor, so I looked up what the building looks like now, so those are all new trees, right? We're taking the other trees down.
So one of the trees can be preserved, and any trees that can be preserved as part of this proposal will be. But all the tree replacements and compensation will be in accordance with the tree preservation bylaw of the city of Stratford.
Any other questions? Councilor Rodolfo.
Thank you for presentation, and I remember we talked last time.
Yeah.
How is the public success? Do you have any relation, any idea? Did you get any relation with the neighbors?
So a lot of those we addressed over the last several months, in talking with staff and being aware of the comments that the public provided from the statutory public meeting. So we believe that this is a solid application that is in alignment with provincial objectives. Our staff have also communicated that they're in agreement with what we have proposed on the site, and we believe we've taken the necessary measures to mitigate any potential issue that could arise out of this. So window locations, balcony locations. I'd like to mention too that each of these lots are permitted to have 4 units as right on them with new provincial policy that's come out for additional residential units. So just to touch on the density of this, we're increasing from 2 units on each lot from what would already be permitted without planning application. So just to point that out as part of this, but we believe we've addressed the concern there.
They have any park or things just walking side?
There are many open space and recreational amenities near the site, including the Matilda playground, the TJ Long natural area. Lake Victoria is within walking distance of this site, so we're anticipating that any future residents would be able to use the amenities that Stratford has available.
Anything further? Councilor Burbank.
Me through the chair. Yeah, just one more thought about snow storage. That's really on a lot of people's minds this year. Had an exceptional amount of snow. And I'm wondering if there's a plan. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of area for snow storage. So if that's something that that you know that is going to be addressed.
Yeah, so my client has communicated to me that snow will be addressed through the use of ice melt. or potential removal if necessary. But with this, snow removal is something that will need to be addressed in the development agreement, to the satisfaction of the city. So we will be working with the city on that as well.
Other comments? I know Ms. Richards will be available later on if there are other questions following our delegations. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And at this time, I'll invite Mr. Messer forward. His nation.
Have a lot of that I wanted to say, and I tried to pare it down to 10 minutes, but it's a really tight fit, so have to bear with me or shut me up. First of all, I can't believe we're back. I'm gonna have to read this. I had to write it. Anyway, can't believe we are back here again with the same objections against the exact same zoning application. When we left the April 14th, 25 council meeting, we were under the impression that the proposal had been turned back to the developer to review and redesign to accommodate the objections. Instead, we have the same plan. I am not sure why we even have zoning laws. We just change them whenever we want for whomever we want. Not an engineer, an architect, or a politician, but rather a simple citizen of the city of Stratford who partakes in the democratic process of voting to elect a mayor and city council to take care of its citizens. In other words, do what's best for the people. In that light, I ask you, where does the taking care part appear in this rezoning application plan? Which basically lets the developer have whatever he wants. All they had to do was wait 10 months, reapply with the exact same plans, with maybe a little engineering tinkering around the edges, and get it pushed through in a 5-day stint. Those of us on the email list were notified late last Monday, and most of the citizens in the area went without notification. I don't know why we bothered to send out notices at the beginning to anybody in the 200-meter area or whatever it was. What's the point? Nobody has changes anything. This tells me that this developer is either arrogant or ignorant, or he's just very confident that he will get whatever he wants from council. Either way, he has no concern for the local residents who have to live in this oversized with his oversized twin boxes. Once this has been built, neither you nor the developers will live in the immediate vicinity, but we will. To be very clear, no one in the area, those on either side across the street or on the street behind, wants this rezoning or this planning development as it is designed now. For many, many reasons, which were all reiterated at the April 25th, 25 council meeting, and I will review in a moment. It's funny, both my wife and I independently, but at the same time, thought about the movie It's a Wonderful Life, in which old man Potter sits around trying to figure out how to take more control over Bedford Falls citizens, with an eye to replacing the building of subdivisions of modest, well-built, designed affordable homes in Bailey Park with his dream, Potter's Field filled with poorly designed buildings and uncontrolled rents simply to make maximum profit. Sounds like maybe this developer and or. When I was canvassing the neighborhood for the April 14, 25 meeting, one of the supporters said to me, "You know, you're wasting your time. This is already a done deal. The good old boys club has already decided." I was a little taken aback, but not deterred. Sad to say, it sure seems that they were right. In that light, I would like to note in the document that I have here, that is titled Bylaw to Adopt Official Plan Amendment number 36. It states, read first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 9th day of February 26th. And then on the next page, it says adopted February 9th, 2026. Sounds like this has been pre-decided. I don't understand that. Looking at the history of the property, which Alexander explained, was originally a one lot with a semi detached dwelling, which was demolished due to poor construction. Subsequently, application was made to sever the parcel to 2 lots intended for redevelopment as low density residential use with R21 zoning, allowing single detached and semi-detached dwellings on each lot. This severance was approved on August 28, 23, based on the planning staff's recommended approval because the lands were represented to be redeveloped as low density residential use consistent with R21 zoning. Shortly after the completion of this severance, the severed lots were sold to the company, which subsequently led to this application. This all seems to fall together very neatly. As indicated in the planning report, the requirements of the Planning Act, site plan control, and Alexander explained this as well, cannot be applied to developments consisting of 10 dwelling units or less. And of course, this development consists of 2 parcels, each containing 6 dwellings, and therefore are technically exempt from the site plan approval, pages 19 and 20 of the planning report. That's also very convenient. You don't have to go through the site plan process. Now, I'm trying to do as fast as I can. Anyways, the requested bylaw changes are not just slight adjustments, but rather major changes to the existing property zoning, just for these 2 lots. Why not extend this change to all homeowners in the area so we can all build apartment blocks like this? Imagine Huron Street when there is nothing except big box apartment buildings. So much for the heritage corridor. Minimum lot requirement reduced by 25%, increase in maximum density by 100%. Front yard depth reduced by 66%, side yard depth width reduced by 50%. Minimum landscape open space reduced by 50%. Minimum visitor parking reduced by 50%. The many concerns voiced by neighborhood property owners at the April 14th meeting are as follows. Increased density in the neighborhood. Diminished neighborhood character. That picture that was up there with the White House in the middle, that tells the whole story. 2 big square blocks overshadowing all the nearby properties. Reduced property values. Nobody wants to live next to something like this. Privacy and noise impacts, garbage storage and removal, light pollution from the rear parking lot area lighting, which I understand is required by law. Lack of snow storage. I don't know what they would have done with all the snow we've had lately. Drainage and flooding impacts to neighboring properties. The engineering department indicates concern for potential overland flows to neighboring properties as well as a long-term potential flood risk. Page 15 of the planning report. Lack of green space. City's Climate Action Division has serious concerns about the reduction from 30% to 14%. This could also set a precedent in the area, undermining the open space and landscaping requirements as per the official plan, page 5 of the planning. Removal of existing trees. No specificity as to which trees will be removed and if any will be saved. Especially the 3 trees in front on Huron Street, which fit into the aesthetic tree line on a street. Reduce visitor parking, 1 visitor space per building. Anyone in their right mind knows that this is ridiculous. This means each building can only have 1 visitor at a time and no resident can own 2 cars. Of course, there is no parking on Huron Street. Extra parking requirements will flow out into the nearby mini mall and the Stratford orthodontics lot and on the side and rear streets, making for many very unhappy residents, along with potential snow clearing impediments. This is not a good plan. Increased traffic and risk to school crossings. This plan will cause increased traffic to Huron Street, which is already heavier than I have ever seen in 50 years. Design does not meet the city's urban design guideline requiring main entrances to face public streets and be directly accessible from public sidewalks. Section 4.2.1, page 10 of the plan. It would appear that no one was listening at that time, or at least cared about the citizens who live in the area, because we are back where we started. Then there's the heritage corridor. Under the official plan, the city shall require submission of a heritage impact assessment prepared by a qualified professional to address this requirement. See the neighborhood character section of planning report, page 18. Section 3.5.8 infilling in heritage areas, official plan, page 19. States that in the heritage areas and the heritage corridors, the city will ensure that where infilling is proposed, the inherent heritage qualities of the area or corridor will be retained, restored, and ideally enhanced. As stated in the planning report, the current surrounding land use consists of single detached dwellings, triplex dwellings, and neighborhood commercial uses. Also, we should be considering the following, which is for all building developments in general, not the heritage plan or heritage corridor. Section 3.2.3, criteria used to evaluate development proposals, official plan, page 9. The following criteria will be used to evaluate such development proposals in addition to the other applicable policies of the plan. I'm taking out just statements here. I'm not reading it verbatim. Height, massing, and scale are appropriate for site in relation to adjacent residential areas. Building design, which ensures that shadow impacts, particularly on the backyards of existing residential buildings in adjacent residential areas, are minimal.
David, can you wrap up, please?
Well, I'm not done.
I know, but we're beyond the 10, so
Well, I'm gonna go to my summary then.
thank you.
We know something was going to be built on this property, and we are not naive enough to believe that it would be a single detached houses, or rather imagine some form of multi-unit development suitable for the surrounding houses, triplexes or even fourplexes. What we did not anticipate was two oversized, identical, twin 6-unit block apartment buildings wedged onto each of these two lots with no environmental space, likely no trees, and of course no architectural imagination to provide individual uniqueness to each. I have been racking my small brain for 7 days to come up with some way of impressing upon you how the people of this neighborhood feel. And the only thing I kept coming back to was the same statement I made on April 14th at that meeting. Would you want this development next to your home? Of course, you don't have to worry about that because you most likely live in areas where this would never be allowed. So did we. But if someone came along and did exactly this to your neighborhood, think seriously about that. No one wants to buy a house next to 2 apartment blocks like this, meaning reduced property values in the vicinity. In 1975, we relocated from Niagara Falls to Stratford. We chose Stratford because it had small town country qualities, but also had city amenities. We purchased our home, which is an old farmhouse built before 1900. It is a far cry from a fancy home, but it is a home. And we picked out this home because of its residential qualities, house style, verandas, trees, lot size, etc., and because of the residential quality of the neighborhood. Throughout the official plan, as well as the planning report, it consistently refers to the requirement at all times to maintain essential neighborhood qualities and mandating the compatibility with existing residential and heritage areas. This development ignores all of that and in fact will greatly detract from our neighborhood. This whole thing could have been solved simply after the April 14th meeting and avoided by the developer by simply reducing the size of the buildings and redesigning them to fit into the surrounding residential areas. All of this would have gone away. It's the size of this development that is the problem. Thank you for your time. Sorry I was over.
Thank you. Next, I'll invite Mr. Rod moving forward. Rick, whenever you're ready.
My name is Rick Rodigan. I live just down the street from about the same distance Dave lives, but in the opposite direction. Again, we're just here to express our frustrations with the whole process and having nothing new actually brought forward. I have my career in insurance and financial planning, and I live by a very simple motto, and that's people before profits. And I would think that all of you being public servants should agree with that type of statement. And I just feel like this development flies in the face of that completely. So I'm just going to go over a few of the most glaring reasons you should just deny it until they come back with some sort of actual plan instead of a promise to maybe do a plan that maybe could solve the problems. So the first is the high density. I am a vocal proponent for increasing density to reduce urban sprawl. Anybody who talks to me about politics or local politics knows that I say yes, increase density responsibly. This does not do this responsibly. The fact that there needs to be a zoning change first of all, fine, but then to have to apply to change all of the rules of that zoning change just shows how it doesn't fit the area, it doesn't fit the law, and it doesn't need to be there. We just had the presenters just say that they could have done 4 units in each of these. That's only, and then describe it as only 2 more in each unit. Well, it's only 2 less in each unit to follow the rules. One big thing that doesn't get brought up enough in many of these meetings is the garbage and recycling. So this developer is looking to avoid all of the apartment regulations, which would include having a dumpster. So 12 units on a recycling week, which we have every other week, would see 3, potentially 3 receptacles at the curb from each of these units. And then that's 30 feet in front of each unit. So then we have 36 garbage receptacles lined up down here on street in a 60-foot space. How does that fit? How does that work? Sorry, that's in each one, so even more. What's to stop rodents and everything? Where are the tenants going to be holding on to all of this? Where is it all going to go? Especially in the winter when they have, what you just heard, actually no plan for the snow. How are you going to melt 4 feet of snow every 3 weeks on a parking lot that's the entire lot? It's not possible. And it seems like there's no actual plan for it. Plus, there's currently no plan for the drainage. So where is it going to drain to? If you have no plan for the drainage, well, then you're going to melt snow. Another issue we've all brought up is the green space. So you look at the pictures that they had of the space, it looks like there's trees and all. There's nothing in the plan for actual maintaining of the green space. The only green space that the developer is actually going to add, other than what's been taken by the city for the expansion of the highway, is 2 12-foot by 6-foot pieces of grass at the back of the building. And that's the area for 12 units of people to share for their outside time. And that's just, it's unacceptable. There's reasons we have minimums for the green space. There's reasons we have minimum setbacks. And to cite the setbacks, they're saying they're reasonable setbacks if they change the rules. They're not reasonable setbacks if you look at the rules the way they are. So why bother approving it at this point instead of waiting for an actual plan to come back? The other major issue that Dave did bring up is the traffic. Traffic is increasing, and the corner of Huron and Huntington is a major crossing for the school children of Avon Public School. And there are daily near misses with the current traffic amount at that intersection. You can ask any of the crossing guards who work there. You can ask the police services who regularly have to patrol that specific intersection just to stop kids from being hit on the way to school. Now you want to add 12 more units of people. And you don't want to give them parking so they can actually stay there. So they're going to have to be driving around the blocks, driving everywhere to try and figure out where to put their vehicles. The parking is absolutely ridiculous to expect to put in what the developer in April described as high-end apartments and expect there to be 1 visitor parking space, which, by the way, is the only accessible parking space. So that has to be shared by visitors. And each of these high-end units, you can only have 1 vehicle. It's not feasible, and it's not believable that would actually be the people buying it. Again, there's no real plan from the developer what to do with this overflow parking. I get in the summer, you say they're going to park on the side streets, but what about what happens at night when the snow plows need to go by those streets in the winter? There's no plan for it. And as Dave mentioned, it makes us all ask yourself, what are the reasons for our bylaws? Bylaws are there so that responsible development happens, and consistent development happens in the areas of the city, so that it's in the best interest of all of the citizens at large. And now, this developer is asking you to not only change the zoning, but then make them exempt all of the rules of the zoning they want to change. Think about that. They also cited, and they showed many pictures of other high density buildings in the area. Yes, there's apartment buildings on John and Caledonia Street where the old Avon Public School was. But they have proper parking, they have proper setbacks, they have proper green space. Yes, there's the Buckingham apartments that they put that are close to the Matilda playgrounds. They have proper parking, they have proper green space, they have proper setbacks. Even the apartments building that's across from St. Joseph's Catholic Church, they cited that in April as an example of high density. Yes, but it has green space, it has parking, and it's in a proper area. So none of these can be actually used as a similarity between this to justify what's going on. And then it brings me to the point of just ask yourself, just honestly, what's the motivation for pressing for this many units in this area? And the only reason it can be is to maximize profit. And then ask yourself this, does this approval, would it benefit the city of Stratford? Obvious answer is no. Would it benefit the citizens as a whole? No. Would it benefit citizens in the area like myself and Dave and the rest of us? No. So who is it going to benefit? One group of people. And again, just remember, people before profits. Thank you.
Thank you. So council, I'm looking to you if there's any questions that you have for either the agent of the applicant and or planner at this time. Councilor Hunter.
Thank you, through the mayor. Listening to these presentations, it's challenging here because we're bound so closely by provincial law. And for everybody listening, these plans have to conform to provincial policy. And provincial policy currently is increasing housing by all means necessary, it seems. And I just wanted to maybe ask Director Beveridge how this would play out in your opinion if council has proposed.
Through you, your worship. Great question. It depends on what the applicant and the applicant's client would like how to proceed, and that's what I'm getting at there is through the appeal process. So it wouldn't be wise of me to speculate what that outcome would be, and I hope you appreciate my commentary as a professional planner on that process. But what you did speak about is the current environment with the political or the provincial government is one of housing and one of trying to find a range and mix of housing types, housing affordability types, and location. This is one is on an arterial. So I might not be able to answer that question directly, Councillor Hunter, but I do know that Mr. Burnett and the applicant's planner have put a great deal of planning analysis into this proposal.
Other questions, Councillor Henderson?
Through the mayor, with the province changing all these rules, we're really tying our hands because sure you want to intensify, so you want to have 6 units, but then you don't have enough for parking, and then Rick Brock had really brought up, and I visually brought up about recycling and garbage, like where they're going to put all that, and especially if they don't have anything in the back. I was going through my notes trying to see if I could see a picture of the backyard. You know, if they're not having a dumpster or anything. But when it conforms to the provincial planning statement and it conforms to our, with the changes, of course, they're really tying our hands and by changing all the rules. Like it's atrocious that, you know, like in technically they could have up to 9 units that, well, not that size maybe, but some places could have up to 9 units and because it's under 10, they're exempt from the control and it's like, I find it very frustrating.
Other comments, Councilor McGee.
Through the chair. This sort of knocks right up against the problem of our relationship with the province. When we have to deal with presentations, which it doesn't appear that there was much in the way of an attempt to change the proposal from the presentation in April to what we've seen today. Which makes sense, seeing to the public as if we're not interested in their opinions and what they feel their neighborhood should look like. I have a really hard time with this proposal. From it moving from a consented application, which it indicates a attempt to sever for residential units, and then we get an apartment complex that goes outside of site plan control. It's going to end up with very poor decisions over the long run. I'm in favor of investigation in the city of Stratford. I think we need to do that and propose it, but this one I have a really hard time.
Councilor Beck.
Thank you, through the chair. I would agree with what Councilor McCabe is saying, and that's part of my frustration is that you know there wasn't any change or addressing of the issues that we see noted in the report by the developer. So I guess my question is partly, is it possible to defer something like this until we get back more reassurance from the developer, or it's similar idea to what staff has proposed, except that we would not be approving in principle yet. We would wait to see what the changes on paper, at least, addressing some of the issues, and that I would make me more comfortable making the decision. I agree with Councilor McCabe. I also would like to see a test application, but I'd like to see it done in a reasonable way that considers everyone around. You know, like when I look at this proposal, even going from 12 units down to 10, you wouldn't need as many of these zoning amendments because you wouldn't need as much. Your parking requirements would then be reduced. So that there are ways to deal with the amendments that we're being asked to approve by changing the development itself. So anyway, sorry, that's a long-winded sort of question for you, Mr. Becker.
Sure, through your worship and Councillor Verbeck, I appreciate your concerns and those of Councillor McCabe and others. If the desired council with regard to change is a reduction in number of units, that'll be something that the applicant and their agent will discuss and consider what action to take from there. If the change relates to the technical components, whether it's going to function, whether it's going to with the urban design component, how it's going to look from the streets and those sort of items, then that's something that Mr. Burnett has spoke about. So if council's of the opinion that their change has to do with regards to density and the number of units on a site, that might have more significant implications on how this application moves forward. And I don't want to put words in the mouth of the developer or their agent or etc. But I also want to make it known that this is not staff's proposal. This is not staff's application. This staff are processing and providing council with a professional recommendation with regards to the proposal. So it's been spoken about before. The provincial planning statement is now pushing for more density, and the province has introduced legislation that removes a municipality's ability to utilize site plan control for units of 10 or below. There used to be a time where municipalities imposed site plan control and utilize site plan control on semi-detached dwellings, and that was primarily to make sure that fence, a dividing fence between the two units was registered on title, and those two unit owners could not dispute about how the fence was, how high it was, or whether it existed or whether it did not. So there was a time where municipalities in the province was more regulatory with regards to different types of dwelling and density and more people living in more tightly configured environments. But the provincial government is more inclined now to remove any and as many barriers as possible to see units, especially of those of apartments and affordability variety for municipalities. So I know I'm going on a bit of a rant there, but if council desires to deal with unit counts, that might have more significant implications on the future of this proposal than that of the technical and visual aesthetics that Mr. Burnett and the applicant's planner spoke of.
So as a follow-up, so as I proposed, if it went, say, from 12 to 10, it would still be well within the provincial policy statement, would it not? Of intensification, like we would still be, and we would still need a zoning amendment. It wouldn't be us, right? So what I'm saying is intensification, yes, but within reason, yes.
Whether it's 12 units or 10 units, I that's not in front of staff right now. And could there be an argument where that is still in conformity with provincial policy? Potentially, but I don't know what that looks like physically, whether there's still setback reductions, etc. When council's looking at affordable and attainable type of housing units, and I know that there's an issue with parking and whether there's reduction in parking. Well, a unit that doesn't have as many parking or zero is going to be a lot more affordable than a unit or an apartment that does have parking spaces assigned to it. So when we're trying to walk that balance of affordability and attainability and accessibility to housing, and we usually come down to have an argument or a concern about parking. But removing parking, especially on a main arterial in Stratford, has an ability to reduce the going rent, as the case might be for this one, for people living at this point.
Councilor Adolph, go ahead, please.
So, Chair, thank you. Very good. I know we have shortage of house, shortage of affordability. We need house, but we have to look our neighbors, have to look our parents, right? It is very ridiculous. So I don't believe that how you guys, what who's we planning have not planning. This is not Toronto, right? We have a lot of space, not of space, but we have to look our communities. There is no any way to move. Okay, let's have the teams to do works. We have to look our community right now, right? And then I know we need house, we have a shortage of house, but with this stage, I think so. We have to think whether we are looking for good value, we are looking also for our people, for our communities. We have to protect our communities. We live here. This is our town, right? And then, we have to think about that.
Thank you, Councilor Adolph, Councilor Henderson, and then Councilor Bean, and then
So-
7.
The only way I could see a 10-unit work would be one would be 6 and one would be 4. Unless you made them come back with 2 4s. So that would be, 8 apartments. But if we turned this down and, decided that we wanted them to come back with, just being 2 stories high, and then they have lots of parking and probably place to store the garbage and different things and for snow removal. Then they could appeal that, it's my understanding, and then they would win because of the provincial standards. Is that up?
Through your worship, Councilor, that question, Councilor Hunter's asked a very similar question, and as a production planner, I'm a bit apprehensive that we're giving him speculation about what we occurred.
Okay.
Councilor Bean, and then 7.
Thank you, the mayor. I guess this is difficult for me, so I just want to talk through it so that even the public and the people that have come to delegate can hear like the thoughts that we're wrestling with. So first of all, I do see there's red flags. I feel concerned about the drainage, the snow removal, the garbage and recycling bins, parking. Is that accessible space the only one that's the extra space? Or guess that is a question. The way that have learned is that if it meets the provincial planning statement and the city of Stratford official plan, that we really can't deny it. In the sense that it's my understanding, I'm not asking Director Bedford right now, but it's my understanding that if we deny it and it's a field, then we would have to find our own staff and hire outside legal help and all of that to prove that our staff is wrong. It just becomes this big mess. I don't know that we would win it, and I'm not asking because it's been asked already. That's the question we're basically getting down to, is that we end up feeling like if it meets all of those things, our hands end up being tied in the sense that the province has told us what we can and can't, and what we do, and what we have jurisdiction over. So wrestling with it, even though I see all of these problems. So the other thing is that I know people that, not big developers, but people that build houses for a living, and my number one concern that I keep pursuing in the city is affordable housing. And my friends that build houses said there is no such thing as affordable housing. The prices to build are so astronomical, they cannot build affordable. So in the defense of the developer on these properties, it might not be that they're just some greedy people who just want dollar. It might just be that it is so expensive to build that this is the only way this is feasible. So I don't know that for sure, but that is a possibility, that we're looking at astronomical land prices, all of the supplies and everything is just so gotten out of control that it really can't be smaller. So I'm just expressing that so you all know that sitting in this chair, it actually feels very incredibly difficult to make decisions based on this. And when people are delegating, like, I feel like I want to just say, I agree with you, this is not right, but our hands are tied in some ways. So we can't just do that because there's legal things we have to do. So, again, the 4 or 5 things that I have a concern about, definitely the drainage. I can't see snow removal working in the current parking scenario. I don't know how that's even gonna be possible. Seeing blue bins lined up and all of the garbage and everything there, that to me is a logistical nightmare. And I guess the parking, I guess that's just if you're gonna visit, you'll have to park somewhere else and walk there, but so I don't even know if I have like a particular question, because I know it can't be answered. But I just wanted everybody to know what we, when we're looking at it, that our hearts are there. It's that we would like to be able to just make that call and that be the end of it. But if they appeal it and it comes back, we don't like it's probably a lost cause in some way. So anyway, that was just for the benefit of the people who took the time to come and delegate, just so you guys know that this is very, very difficult.
Thank you, Councillor Bean. Councillor 7.
Thank you. I completely disagree with the proposal. I mean, for a list of reasons, but the side yard, the landscaped open space being cut in half, it is not acceptable to me. The density being put up from 106 compared to 55. The maximum lot area for apartments typically 555 meters square versus 750 being proposed. Only one parking. The parking restrictions are concerned. I think if the province dictates 4 units, then fine, they can put 4 units. I think they can do that within the existing zoning bylaws, the setbacks, not 6. We are representatives of the residents of Stratford. Time and time again, I want to thank our delegates. They did a great job presenting. They also mentioned that they feel like their input's being taken and nothing's changing, and that's unfortunate. And as noted in the report, the goals and objectives in our official plan for residential areas include maintaining essential neighborhood qualities such as quiet environment and privacy. You can't have setbacks cut in half and zoning change and official plan amendments and maintain the same privacy if we didn't. We're putting the house twice as close as it would be otherwise. And quite frankly, I think if council believes it's in the best interest of residents and neighborhoods to impose high density apartments directly beside existing detached homes with half the required setbacks, then council should not approve low density development in newly developed areas where no neighbors exist. We can't set a precedent to remove a single detached home and build a 3-story 6-unit apartment. I completely disagree. I think, you know, the province is dictating 4. 4 is a huge increase from, you know, the half of a semi that was on the or the semi-detached home that was on the lot. So I don't think we should, you know, we're already handing over site plan control, we're handing over that 4 units can be built. Our hands are tied absolutely in that respect, but they're not tied. We don't have to give 6 units. I think we should at least push back when it's appropriate. Somebody needs to be listening to the residents, and I think that's what we should be doing. So I don't support this at all.
Other comments or emotion?
Just a quick comment, the Councilor Dean, I think, laid it out well, but the risk here is that if we turn this down and it does get appealed, it will take a lot of time and a lot of money, and we'll get this anyway. That's the risk. And there really is, because it fits the provincial planning statement, our professional planner, who is giving us his professional opinion, says that this is compliant with the law. So it does put our hands in a real bind, I think. We don't have much of a case to stand up for ourselves if this comes from the field.
Thank you, Councillor Hunter. Councillor.
Thank you, and you know, I appreciate Councillor Hunter's comments. My feeling, you know, and it's coming up on, well, over 7 years on council. Every time there's a controversial or a development that comes to council that is being recommended by our staff, this discussion comes up. And this has absolutely nothing to do with, you know, the quality of staff. We have excellent staff at the city. This is a question of, we have these proposals come to council, and if we're just going to rubber stamp and approve, sorry for banging that, if we're going to rubber stamp and approve everything, then what is our role as council? So that's
Councillor Henderson and Councillor Burbank.
If I may.
Councillor.
Thank you, Your Worship, and to Councillor Seven's comments there, I want, you know, to that staff do have some sort of conditions to, so that we're not necessarily recommending a rubber stamp. There's an approval with some significant conditions, particularly that development agreement.
Councillor Henderson and Councillor Burbank. Councillor Seven.
To the mayor, I just want to say I started on council in 2006, and many times we've gone through situations like this, and you know, your heart feels one way, but your brain knows another. And in my opinion, I think there's only been one case that when the neighbors or the developer appealed, that we actually lost. They all won. And I remember a gentleman when they were doing off of Lone Ave there in the ground development, and he said to me, "How sure are you that we'll lose?" And I said, "I'm only 99.9% sure," because it's part of the provincial stand, and you know, there's a lot of setback things here that we might have a bit of a an issue with, or be able to work it somehow, but it's unfortunate, and it's hard because we've seen, I think, 2 that I remember on Hearn Street that the neighbors really opposed, and they've got them up, and there they are, you know. This is another one. I've looked it up, I drove by it, and I mean, the building looks nice, it looks like it's gonna fit in, but the concerns are, it's not accessible because it's got stairs and it's got an accessible parking lot. The parking is very low. And I cannot get the vision out of my head of all these garbage recycling things, but then I live on Patricia, and there's apartments there, and they have the big bins of it. Anyway, that's just my comments.
Thank you, Councillor.
It's hard.
Councillor Burbank and then Councillor Seven.
Thank you, through the chair. Yeah, I have the same concerns, especially about drainage. Unlike some of the comments from the delegates, some of us actually do live on backing onto major arterial roads in Stratford and have parking lots in our backyard, and I can, if, in my particular case, I moved to my home after that property behind mine was developed. But I was told by my neighbors that, you know, our basements have never been the same since that parking lot was developed in that, you know, despite all the assurances and engineering that was done. It was probably 15, 20 years ago. But things do change for neighbors, and so there are spill-on effects, even though we do the best we can. And you know, engineering's come a long way in that, but I guess from my perspective, is there a way, I guess my question is there a way, when I'm looking at the particular things that are being asked to be changed as far as zoning goes, that's what we're looking at tonight. Are there any, is there an appetite amongst council to possibly change some of those zoning requests? Like for instance, a minimum 14% landscape open space for apartment buildings compared to the required 30% landscape. So my question, I think, for Mr. Creeklaw is it possible with a 14% landscape open space for there to be property? Is it, because there's engineering sites concerns with that already? Like, for instance, so what I'm proposing is, like, what if we change that to 20%? And then the developer would need to then figure out how to make that work.
Yeah, through your worship, good question. It's not uncommon, especially on our Taylor roads, to have increased amplification, increased land use that can exacerbate drainage, particularly on those roads. In the past, one of the key elements which I think is touched upon in the development agreement is trying to have the overland flow drainage going back towards the street, which can be achieved through elevating grade and paving. I have not looked at this plan particularly for that, but that's one of the options that we do recommend and propose, as well as trying to maximize ponding within the parking lot area, and then through a storm drain direct flow back to the street. So it is feasible to have sufficient drainage in these types of developments, for even if it's at 14% green space. So the green space is not only the requirement that triggers whether there is good drainage on set runs for how the water flows for seasons of the years.
Councillor Seven.
I don't know my own thing.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Rodolphe.
Okay, first I want to say thank you for our staff, for the planner and engineer, what they're doing for our court. I have big respect for them. I know we respect our provincial government, we have to work with them like friendly. But also listening, we have to listen, but also we have us elected. We have right to vote, we have right also to look after our communities. And I know if you go in the house, you know, there is a community house. So many homeless people outside, they need house. We need a green house right now. But we need also quality life for these people. People who deserve very for a long time this community. And then we don't want to make it junk. Right? We have to, but we have to work again with plan. Maybe we just need to work with our community to get some negotiation or maybe to change the plan. Or that's my advice for guys. And then we have to look at our communities. We have to look, but it's still not late. And then as well as councillor, I know we need a house. We have right to decide right now, and then we have to look after our communities.
Thank you, Councillor Rodolphe. Other comments? Councillor B.
Maybe this is a question for Mr. Burnett, but the lot area. So what they're requesting, I guess, is the lot area to be reduced from 750 meters square down to 565 meters square, so they're looking at putting a bigger building on a smaller lot, is that what that?
I'm gonna ask Mr. Burnett to come forward and give these. Do you need that question restated?
No, for the mayor, I think I can answer it, however, if I don't answer it correctly, we can go back and forth. But thank you for the question, Councilor B. What that request specifically with reduced lot area is asking for is, the city of Stratford zoning bylaw outlines minimum lot size requirements for certain uses. And so the minimum lot size for a single detached dwelling may be a set square meters, and the minimum lot size for an apartment building might be a certain, like a certain number. In this case, the R51 zoning bylaw, the R51 zoning requires a minimum lot area of 750 square meters. Because this lot is an existing lot, they're asking that to be reduced. Like, it won't meet that standard as it currently is. It's not necessarily that they're asking for a larger building to be put on a smaller lot. That is more lot coverage. This application is meeting the lot coverage requirements, which, and I don't know offhand I can find you that information, but let's say it's 40%. Your lot coverage is how much area the building can cover on said lot. They are meeting that requirement, so they are scaling the building to meet the lot coverage requirement of said lot. It's just the actual lot fabric, like the parcel itself, is smaller than typically we will find for an apartment building. And so in this case, that's typically because this is a standard. This is when this lot was created, it was to be originally used for a single or a semi-detached dwelling, which means they're slightly smaller than what your typical apartment building lot might be. However, when we reviewed the application, ultimately the lot area requirement is more so so that lot areas are consistent across the city, but it's more so that they meet certain requirements. So that coverage example that I use is a good one, because city staff were of the opinion that we're supportive of the reduced lot area because of, for instance, they are meeting their lot coverage requirement, which means they scale the building design proportionally so that it fit on site. So that's one of the things we'll take a look at when we review an application. And that's part of the rationale that went into why staff are supportive of the reduced lot area. Ultimately, the lot area can't increase, like what's there is what's there. And so that request is more of an administrative, kind of like a technical aspect, on the basis of, again, that's what's there, and then they want to fit the proposal within those guidelines. So hopefully that somewhat makes sense.
Follow up.
So I might not be understanding it totally correctly, but the amount of, so in our official plan, it says that for an apartment building, we need 750 meters squared. So in a sense, if we don't have that, then it shouldn't, an apartment building shouldn't fit this piece of property according to our official plan. So that's where we have to make the exception, but we're going outside the lines.
Through the mayor. So I wouldn't use the official, I wouldn't say official plan, it's requirement of the zoning. The official plan doesn't dictate lot requirements to that degree. Things like setbacks and heights and like areas, lot coverage and landscape, that's dealt with through zoning rather than the official plan. But so the zoning bylaw does clarify, for a specific use, here's the average, not necessarily average, sorry, but here's the minimum lot area requirement, based on certain standards that were determined when the zoning bylaw was created. Those are across the board, so that's one apartment on one side, city versus the other. And I don't know where that 750 square meter, what the intent was behind that. I doubt there was a study that determined that 750 is the minimum. However, that was the bar that was set. In this case, the lot itself is smaller than 750, and so they're looking to reduce that requirement to accommodate this development.
Other questions, comments, Councilor McCabe?
We've had a lot of different applications in front of sort of the last three 3 years, 3.2 years, something like that. And even though there's been a number of them that are like, oh, I'd rather this wasn't in there, but in a general sense, overall, I can see the argument for it. This one is really difficult because I don't, this does not take into account anything with the public or with your elected officials to come forward with a proposal like this, in my view. And even though we would likely lose at the LP or when we if they challenge this, the reality is that we are here to deal with people who are our constituents. And because we've elected a provincial government that does not take that into consideration, doesn't mean that we can't act to show that we are displeased with. So that's the way that I have to look at that at this point. I found a reason to support every other application in the city prior to this.
Thank you, Mr. McGee. Other comments or questions? Yes. Mr. Burnett or other staff, Councilor Dean?
Thank you, just to follow up again. Thank you, they're not moving. So if hypothetically, we were just to say that one specific zoning amendment, we would say no to amending that, then it would be up to them to figure out if they want to reconfigure or whatever but that's just not, that's on them. If we say, I want to uphold this zoning bylaw, that would change things, just this one particular one. Would that be correct?
Through the mayor, thank you for the question. Yes, essentially, if council were to pick and choose one aspect of the requested provisions to deny, that would ultimately result in the current standard, whatever zoning requirement that it is, to be upheld, which means that the applicant would have to potentially reconfigure the development if they wish to proceed based on the standard requirement. Just because we were on the topic of that land or that lot area one, that one itself can't really be changed. Like the lot itself, unless they're purchasing neighboring properties, like I don't want to get into technicalities there, but the lot itself isn't going to expand. So just for instance, if you were to pick and choose and say we're gonna not we're not gonna approve the request for a setback, that doesn't necessarily kill the project because the applicant can still potentially go back and revise the proposal, potentially to meet whatever the current standard is. In that case, however, the lot area one is because it's specifically that's what the size of the lot is. If you were to say no, we want an apartment building, which is any building essentially with more than 5 units, to have a lot area of 750 meters, that wouldn't be possible based on the fact that the lots have been severed and are a lesser area.
Well, what would be possible then is that it wouldn't be apartment buildings. Would that be something different?
Yes, perfect, the mayor, correct, yeah.
Councilor Burback.
Thank you, the mayor. Yeah, so that actually you've got what I was driving at. Is perhaps is it possible that we could choose one of these zoning requests and remove it so that I think the project should go ahead, but I don't think it should go ahead the way it's proposed. So is there a way that we could remove one of the possible zoning request amendments so that the project could go ahead mostly in its form, but also then possibly change some of it, and then we wouldn't be denying necessarily, we would just be modifying.
We're gonna go to Director Bennett.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps it's there's an opportunity for the applicant's planner to speak about what adjustments they're willing to consider and what implications that may have. I don't know if it's right for staff to be dictating how this can move forward with that, so perhaps it's best to have somebody for you.
This Richards, you want to come forward this time?
If Alex has some shit to say.
I might just add on to Director Betters, but then we can thank you to Director Betters for jumping in. One other thing I do just want to bring to the council's open, only because council has brought up the what the appeal routes are. The applicant would be the opportunity to appeal in the decision, even if it's an approval an applicant can appeal specific reductions or like any aspect of an application, so I don't want that to be forgotten. Like if you're tweaking an application based on approving 90% of it, but denying 10, there are still appeal options just for council to consider. The other thing I'll suggest, and this is something that it does make more sense for the applicant to touch on, but when you are, if you were to approve, let's say 50% of the requests, but not denying the other 50%, you may result in a parcel of land that is just deemed undevelopable. Because it might be permitted to have an apartment with this setback and this density, but not this landscaping and not this setback as on this side and not this, and then you're left with a parcel of land that can't be developed at all, and then an application will come back to council to restart the process anyway. So just, I know I threw out a lot there, but there's a lot of considerations in mind when you start piecemealing an application. So,
Thank you. Don't go far.
I won't.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to start by saying I appreciate everyone's comments and the thought that everyone is considering this application and putting into this. I can't necessarily speak on what our client would be willing to amend about this application. That's something that we would need to speak to them about and they would need to give us specific direction on that. I would like to say though, some of the comments that have been addressed, reducing say the density of this development by a unit or two doesn't necessarily change the footprint of this building. To speak to the lot coverage aspect of this plan, the lot coverage in the existing zoning is actually at 40%. In the zone that we're requesting to go to now is 35%. And with the building on each of these lots, it's about 27% that we're at. So it reducing the number of units, it not only doesn't reduce the size of the building, but it also reduces the feasibility of this development going forward. For reasons that councillors have given, that the cost of land and development in this day and age is very difficult to compensate for, and there's certain balance that you try to strike between the outcome of that development being financially feasible and actually putting it through. And I'd like to speak to the affordability aspect of this development too, is that our client has been in discussions with the city of Stratford regarding the affordable incentives, and they are certainly willing to look at putting that in this development if those incentives are available. So yeah, I just wanted to speak to that a little bit, and I can answer any other questions that you might have.
Councilman Kate.
Through the chair, this mention of the affordability now, as opposed to before mentioning that concerns me, because if that was an intention, then why was that not brought forward in your presentation?
My apologies, it was in my notes, but I think I might have accidentally skipped over a couple of things. That was brought forth in the public meeting in April 2025. We did mention that affordability and incorporating affordable units was part of the objectives for this development. And again, if the incentives are there, our client is more than willing to incorporate that as part of this.
Councilor Golf.
So Chair, thank you, Diana. So wonderful presentation, it's good. But at this moment, we are not looking for affordability. We are not looking total. We are not looking. We are looking our community. I know you see it very tiny, and it's not confident of our community. It's not yet not safe. Want to be these people that safe, never safe, right? That's what we're looking. But we want affordability.
Yeah.
It is not a place to get affordability. I know you mentioned to us to give us, issue us affordability, and then that's not work. That's not work. But at this moment, I have a big respect for my staff, for city planner. Maybe they can discuss, maybe they can talk, maybe can giving us bring another presentation. That's what we're looking at this moment. So.
Any other questions, comments for Ms. Richards? this time? Seeing none, thank you. Council, there is an opportunity to make a motion at this time.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Thank you. A seconder for that. Councillor Hunter will second. Discussion, Councillor Savage.
Can I just circle a goal, please?
Yes. Any other comments prior to turning to the clerk this time? Councillor Henderson.
Through the mayor, I think we've had a wholesome discussion and, obviously the citizens are hearing this too about how frustrating it is when some things like this come where I'm personally really excited about the fact of having, 12 more units on a street that's, close to downtown, close to the amenities and, close to grocery stores and different things and, but then you struggle with making sure that it's gonna fit in with the city and I know what we went through on the other 2 units in Marion Street and when I drive by and look at them and, I don't know how they're working for garbage collection or for, water. I haven't heard anything bad about it, but I know that our staff works very diligently to make sure that all of our zoning bylaws are followed so that any new developments, especially in this day and age, they go forward. And so for those reasons, I'm gonna be happy to support this.
Just before we go in with the vote, I know CAO Moran would like to take it earlier.
So thank you through the mayor. So again, it's been a really good conversation and obviously a challenge with something like this that you've all identified is it's either a yay or nay decision, which then leads to some challenges one way or the other. Having said that, we did hear the developer's agent go up tonight and say maybe they're willing to take a look at some of the options. One option we may want to consider is if you defer this, allow the developer to provide any further comments back to city staff, and then we'll bring this back at a further date. Again, if it's the same proposal again, you got the same decision you have in front of you, but the challenge is we can't go back and negotiate something like this. It would have to be the applicant providing something back to us. But also saying yay or nay tonight puts you in kind of a top position from what I've already heard comments at. So that may be something you can consider spring.
Councillor Burbank.
Thank you, through chair. Yeah, I was thinking that deferral would be a good idea so that the developer could come back to more thoroughly address some of those concerns that we have. I also wanted to thank staff for thinking up, or I don't know, coming up with the idea of the development agreement because I think that's pretty clever. But I would move to defer.
Seconder for that. Councillor Bean will second. Discussion. There is no discussion. We're on the floor. There's a motion on the floor, so. That motion, Councillor.
I was gonna say, how about I'll make a motion, or I would like to withdraw my motion.
And you'll see that, and then we have a deferral on the floor. Go back to staff with this item. All in favor? Just hold your hand up, please, so I can get it going. Opposed? And that's carried. And what I'm going to request here is if we can take a short break. And I thank certainly the agent, staff and certainly our public for being here. So we'll take a short break. And you're welcome to stay for the balance of the meeting. But Dave, was that a handshake? No? Okay. Next item,
Through your worship, item 7.2 is the Lake Victoria Drawdown event overview and next steps. And our manager of environmental services has information that he is going to share. And then we have two members from Upper Thames as well in attendance, Chris Tasker and Jillian Smith.
So we'll welcome Mr. Beachboard this time.
Good evening, Mayor, staff, members of the council, and the public. This report is to provide council with the contributing factors leading to the drawdown events of Lake Victoria in July 2025. It informed council of proposed mitigation strategies to avoid similar events in the future. So Chris is going to go ahead and speak about the drawdown events, a brief overview. And I'll speak about the mitigating strategies that we're going to put forward, and then Jerry will be here to answer any questions about the safety boom that is proposed to be installed.
Thank you. Councilor Gage.
Just through the chair, I just want to note that I did receive some correspondence from Colin Care from about this regarding some questions which have been sent to staff. They're going to respond to that, but also possibly talk to some of those issues.
Thank you. Mr. Tasker, go ahead.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the mayor and council for having us, giving us this opportunity to speak to both the drawdown event and installation of the safety boom, which is timely because they are very closely connected, actually, because of benefits related to debris handling. You have the report as part of my report, or our report that went to our board following the event to provide it in its entirety to you. I won't go over it in detail here, but we'll hit on a few of the highlights just from the event and what happened on that during that event. The report also includes the details on the safety boom, as Sean alluded to as well. So that's provided there as well. The storm that resulted in the gate openings in July of last year was much like most or many summer events, and not all that much dissimilar from some of the events that occurred after that actually helped to fill it. There's some numbers in the report as to the amount of rain that was received. It was received, a lot of it in a very, very short period of time. Most of the response to that event probably coming from urban runoff directly into Lake Victoria, resulting in the water level coming up. And the gates did what they were supposed to do. When the water level comes up, they operate to allow greater discharge downstream in response to that. And if it continues to go up, they would continue to open that particular time. It was through the first level of opening, and the water level started to come back down again. And they did what they're supposed to. They closed, but unfortunately, there was something that stopped them from closing completely. So that left a small gap at the bottom of the gate. It didn't seal completely. And the action taken after that point was to attempt to jog that gate open to allow, it's assumed it was debris to pass through, and then closed again to see whether we were successful each successive attempt to do that resulted in the gate being stuck open further, which would, if continued, would have caused the reservoir to draw down even faster than it did, and cause considerably more damage without the environmental damage to the aquatic life in the reservoir. As we watched it go down, we felt it was safe to get in to try and remove that debris through other means. We were able to respond. It took a lot of time and effort from staff, other units to mitigate the effects of that on mussels and aquatic life, fish and that sort of thing, to try and minimize the impacts with down and whatnot. To get in there, clear as debris, further, and flush things out, got to seal completely, and then we're able to start bringing it back up. Bringing it back up was a significant challenge, as it would be any time when you try and fill a reservoir like that in the summertime. We fill it with spring with runoff generally. When there's an increased flow, very difficult to fill it in the summertime. It took considerable effort, watching it very closely to bring it up slowly. We had a couple of runoff events, storms, if you will, that passed through Stratford. It was kind of amazing to watch them track through and see that they did actually come through the city, each time bringing it up a little bit more. We were able to capture that. The last of those events was what brought it up to its summer operating level. The other thing that's noteworthy to draw attention to were the efforts of other parties to go out, namely the people involved with the Dragon Boat Festival, to secure permits to be able to pump water from an upstream gravel pit into the river so that it would help fill the reservoir quicker. As it turns out, that wasn't necessary. With that last event, it brought it up to back up to its summer operating levels on the actual day that I believe were within a day of when they were planning to start that pumping operation. I think that is all I really wanted to say about the event and the summary. Of course, it's there with a fair amount of detail with that.
So in terms of going forward and mitigation strategies, we have a few different plans going forward. So we're going to implement more frequent dam inspections by city staff, especially after heavy rainfall events. We're updating the dam operations and maintenance standard operating procedures. There'll be extra training for staff both from the Upper Thames and the city of Stratford. So we're going to be doing that in the springtime. There's going to be increased communications between city staff and the Upper Thames, including updated emergency contact lists. We've already established that. Additional debris removal after storm events, after we do our inspections. And then, as discussed earlier, a capital project this year is to install a safety booth that has a debris skirt that will mitigate debris getting to the gate. So this is a verbal presentation. If there's any questions.
Questions from Council Henderson.
To the mayor, is this a temporary thing? Like, I'm sorry, but suddenly.
With the converting the safety booth?
Well, the safety booth, is it just gonna be temporary while we fix the dam so that we don't have problems in the future? Cause, you know, our river's beautiful and another thing is, does it have to be so far out? I'm just thinking of all the some things that are going at this.
Director Craig.
Yeah, so we're trail put in jump in if I'm sitting. I did provide an image to council earlier. It was a conceptual idea only. Do not take that image should really beyond the fact that it gives you an idea of the color and the approximate location of where a safety boom might be installed at the Thomas Or Dam. In the council agenda, there is a snippet of where the exact location would be. I provide a bit more detail, but I want imagery so you can visualize what that might look like. The color, like this would essentially, you don't have a lot of options in terms of what color it is. It's meant to be a safety feature first. It's through their dam safety guidelines that basically identify what is required. So there's minimal options in terms of what that would look like and where that would go. I would pass it on to Julia.
Ms. Smith, do you want to jump in at this time with regards to the vote?
I can,
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
And through you, the response to is it temporary? No, it's permanent. It's important because of the risks and hazards at the dam that there be a safety boom. We were already in the process of proceeding with that. We have installed one at Fanshawe already. We're working on installing one at Wildwood. We want to install it at Pittock. There is an abundance of traffic isn't the right term, but it's widely used as you were pointing out. And with the dam, well, it's we haven't had any incidents here at this particular dam in the past, thankfully, with regard to public safety, but there are hazards there that are not obvious to somebody that's approaching it from the water level or from canoe or kayak. It is important that it be far enough away that it not be within that area where the increased flow would draw somebody in and possibly over or through the dam, where they would be impacted by the automatic operations that I was just speaking to basically. So it does need to be outside of that area a reasonable amount. We kept it as narrow as possible, especially seeing with the proximity of the boathouse next door to it, basically, where a lot of those users are.
So my next part of the question is, I understand the safety part of it, and I didn't realize that it's becoming sort of the norm at other dams. I was just sort of, I hadn't heard of that before. So who collects all the stuff that's being caught by that? Is it us or do you come out or how does that?
If I may respond to that, there's a lot of people up here that could probably respond to it, but seeing as I was just speaking, I'll take the first cut at it. I think that's for us to work together with the city staff to deal with it because it will capture debris, and it will be necessary to respond to that on a bit by bit basis, depending on how much debris is accumulated. It may be very simple and straightforward. It may require that we have to bring somebody else in to actually clean that up. The goal would be to let as little as possible of it to settle out so that it couldn't head back at the dam.
Does the safety boom just sit on the surface? Will something still go under it?
So we are, with these ones in particular, we have a skirt that we're also adding to the pontoons. And so that goes down an extra foot and then that would capture the that's trying to look at fruit out.
So it can still get under that or not?
If someone gets waterlogged or something, sure, right?
So you have to pretty well get out there and clean it right away.
Before.
Councillor Henderson, if we could have not that dialogue, if you could ask the question through the chair and then we'll identify. So go ahead with that one.
Sure, thanks. Through you, Mayor, in response to the question, it's important that we try and capture the remove the debris as soon as we can after events so that it doesn't become submerged. But in all likelihood, if it becomes submerged, it's far enough out that it would take a very, very significant event to draw into the dam. Again, we're trying to keep it far enough away that the velocities are slow, so there's not much that's pulling towards the dam. So I think that probably can subspecies.
So my last question is, could we end up with something like that? In that picture?
Shit. No, it's not in all likelihood. This is fan shot on a much bigger river that's flowing into it.
But they ended up with something like that?
That is what happened the first spring. The safety boom was in place. That's not unusual for large events for there to be that much debris moving through the system. That's not what we would expect to see here in Stratford. You've got a manicured park surrounding it. In this case, most of the lake surrounding Fanshawe Lake is kept in a more natural state. There are lots of trees that overhang it. There's a large river that's flowing into it. That brings debris down, which gets pushed up onto the floodplain, basically in the reservoir. And then when a big event like this comes along, it floats and comes back down to. So I would not characterize that as what we would expect to see in Stratford.
Other questions and comments? I didn't know, Ms. Smith, did you want to say anything about the boom itself?
I think everyone has the report here, so.
Thank you. Councilor Bean?
Thank you, the mayor. I think the question's been answered by Director Crinklow mostly, but my question was, if it's not in a major boating area, can there be colors that are a little more muted that aren't so bright and such an eyesore at the river? Like, is that a possibility? Are there options? Okay. That's basic answer.
I would say the boats themselves are colorful as well, so.
It needs to be visible. The whole idea is that people can see it and avoid it. That is very, very important, and that's why there are standards as to color and size and shape and all that sort of thing that we work with our designers.
Other comments or questions? Councilor Beatty, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just gonna circle back to our agenda we had in July to the past year. I think the question I'm gonna ask is what's been on every resident's mind that's witnessed that, and that's probably every resident of Stratford. How can we ensure this does not happen again?
Ensuring that it absolutely cannot happen again is something that would be very, very costly, and I'm not even sure whether it's possible. I think what's important is that we try and balance the appropriate measures to reduce the likelihood of that happening. With any undershot gate, there's always the potential that something gets stuck in it. And if it is such a thing that it can't get passed safely through it, it could happen. And the only way to clear it. So that's why we're talking about the measures to improve the management of debris around it. That's why we're looking at, so I shouldn't think that one, but the safety boom and optimizing the safety boom. The report that was part of your package identifies a number of other things that could be looked at, but quite honestly, their costs would be very expensive and they wouldn't necessarily prevent that from happening. And they may cause other things, have other negative aspects of it.
If I may, just a quick follow-up. Go ahead, come back to you. And appreciate looking at all options, how we can do it, whether it's this boom here, for getting stuff that's on top, other measures that we had in our material that you shared with us. Is it also possible that low tech best case solutions from previous responses have also been an opportunity to address this and help?
I think one of the things that might go to that is what we've already been speaking to, and what Sean mentioned is the increased efforts to surveil it, to go out to the structure, see what's going on. If we notice that anything, it gets cleaned up immediately so that it doesn't settle out. I think that's what you're looking for, so those low cost.
Yeah, well, I'll just use the word proactive. So for me, I believe that Stratford has a good relationship with towns. And for me, it's to say that this relationships were strained by the residents is fair. I mean, I don't like getting into feelings, I like to deal with facts. But the facts are, could we have been more proactive? And if we can, is that something that ensure that that we, whether it's the city, upper towns, or the collaboration together, that we can do our best practice to ensure that we, we can never guarantee or say with 100%. But I would just like to be able to say to the residents of Stratford, we've learned from this. We're looking at how we can move forward, and whether it's low tech, high tech, or somewhere in between, that we're looking to ensure that we do our best to ensure that this doesn't happen again.
Anything further from council? Councilor Murdo.
So Chair, thanks so much. I'll just follow Councilor Brad. And do you have any emergency response? I have two questions. Do you have emergency response? My first thought is this one. Second one, we tried to call you so many times with that situation. Nobody responds. Right? We need for us, for our communities, huge damage. Okay, whose responsibility for that damage? Please.
The chair, maybe I'll jump in here. I guess first and foremost, talk about emergency procedures. We do actually have an SOP for emergency procedures for the Thomas Or Dam. We do have several kind of jargon terminology, standard operating procedures. That's generally our guideline how we ensure we're trained and aware of how to respond to various situations that might come forward. Debris management has not, I don't believe, been traditionally in those SOPs, so it's now something we will be adopting or looking to developing in the near future. We've already have a framework of what we think would be included. But in terms of emergency response, that goes back to the third bullet point there. We do know who the right contacts are, but definitely having it refreshed in our policies to be updated will help streamline the immediate responses required to address the situation as they arise. So there's been a lot of transition on our side, a lot of transition on upper Thames in terms of staffing, and it's good to get back into the understanding and expectations of who those right people are in the right situation. So we have been doing it, but we're gonna establish newer, clearer policies regarding how to address in emergency situations. In terms of responsibility, I think that's a bit of a loaded question. Unfortunately, weather is weather, and we can't stop trees from falling into the lake from farm fields further up afield, or even in our own system. We do have some decaying trees, other debris, detritus that enters into our lake system. So it goes back to the discussion about trying to provide as many mechanisms as possible to mitigate debris from entering dams to stop this from happening in the future. That's what we're proposing here, and that's the list of 5 items that will help us achieve a reduced likelihood that this will happen again, and so hopefully that's going to
Thank you. Anything further from council? Thank you for coming forward this evening and working with the city. Thank you very much. I believe we have a motion to attach this item.
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. So there is a staff recommendation that council receive the report Lake Victoria Drawdown Event Overview and Next Steps for information, and that council support the Upper Thames River Conservation Authority to proceed with the tendering and installation of the safety boom at the RT Or Dam.
Mover for that item, Councillor Hunt will move, seconded by Councillor Nigel. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Item 7.3 is the appointment to the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee, and there is a staff recommendation that direction be given on the appointment of one citizen to the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee for the remainder of a 2-year term to November 14th, 2026, or until a successor is appointed by council. And as noted, we are looking for direction on one of the candidates to be nominated for appointment.
Thank you. Councillor Burback, go ahead, please.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that Scott Woodford be appointed to the Energy and Environment Committee.
Thank you. Seconder for that, Councillor McCabe will second. Discussion. Call the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Item 7.4 is a road widening for site plan application, 372 to 378 Huron Street. There is a staff recommendation that council authorize the conveyance, part 1, on reference plan 44R-4854 from DNR Pole Holdings Inc. to the Corporation of the City of Stratford. And then upon conveyance of part 1 to the city, these lands be dedicated as public highway forming part of Huron Street.
That item. Moved by Councilor Spurback, second by Councilor Hunter. Discussion. None noted, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is unanimous and carried.
Item 7.5 is the household hazardous waste agreement between the city and the Township of Perth South and the Township of Perth East. And there is a staff recommendation that the Corporation of the City of Stratford enter into an agreement with the Corporation of the Township of Perth South for the participation of Perth South residents in the city's household hazardous waste events for a 4-year term. That the City of Stratford enter an agreement with the Township of Perth East for the participation of their residents in the city's household hazardous waste events for a 4-year term, and that the mayor and clerk or their respective delegates be authorized to sign the necessary agreement.
Thank you. Moved by Councilor Bean, seconded by Councilor Rodolfo. Discussion. Councilor Spurback.
Thank you through the chair. Just wanted to note that staff also has an application in to increase the number of hours that we can do household hazardous waste. So hopefully we'll be hearing back from the ministry soon. You know, a little bit wider window to get our hazardous waste.
Thank you. Thank you to staff for this important work. It works together with the adjoining townships. So I don't believe I called the question. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Item 7.6 is the 2026 Canada-wide Early Learning and Childcare System Directed Growth and Innovation Fund update. And there is a staff recommendation that the report titled 2026 Canada-wide Early Learning System Directed Growth and Innovation Fund update be received for information.
Councilor Henderson will move, seconded by Councilor Rodolfo. Thank you. Any discussion? Councilor Spurback.
The chair, yeah, just a question about this program. We know that from previous reports from social services that we do have quite a list of kids waiting to get into childcare spaces in Stratford and in Perth County. And it's an ongoing challenge, and we see in the report that there are some good news stories that we're getting more spaces. There's also the issue of home care daycare providers that we don't have any licensing agency in Stratford and area. So just curious about an update on when we might possibly be able to accommodate for that. And just I had somebody reach out to me today to talk about home daycare. It's a parent who has a child in home daycare currently. The current charge is $55 per day per child. So that translates to about $1,100 a month or $14,300 per year per child. This family's having a second child enter daycare. So that's a lot of money. The program that the province is helping with is a $22 a day daycare. So that's less than half of the current going rate in Stratford. So it'd be really great if we were able to get some more licensed daycare spaces available so that more families can take advantage of this provincial program. And I know that we're a service manager, so as a municipality, we don't necessarily run this. We manage the program, we do not necessarily fund it, but I'm just curious as to if we've been able to make any headway in getting a licensing possibility here in Stratford.
Director McElroy.
Yes, thank you for your question. Through the chair, we continue to work on a business case. We were working towards licensed home child care, provincial funding formula change, and then it's changed again. We want to ensure what the impact on potential tax levy could be if we did implement this. It's favorable that we could bring it back with new numbers as to implementing this program. And the children's service manager, you'll see a report coming with the business case as to the new numbers of what this looks like and the impact on the tax, the municipal tax levy of implementing the licensed home childcare program.
Okay, thank you. Just as a follow-up, are we considering, like, would that look like a case for getting outside provider, like somebody to provide the service, or are we thinking more in-house?
Through the chair, we had to bring that in-house to begin with. We're always open to providers that may come forward on this, so if they wish to come forward, absolutely. But we are looking at directly operating it at this point, and we go there not be providers like.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, and just remind council that we did make presentation at Roma to the minister, and we're waiting for follow-up from him as well, so good questions, thank you, Council Purbeck, appreciate it. Next item, oh, I'm sorry, did we vote on that? We did not vote on that, I'll call a question on that, all in favor? Most of any, that's unanimously carried.
Through your worship, item 7.7 is the Rotary Complex William Allman Memorial Arena and Dufferin Lions Arena dehumidifier replacements. And there is a staff recommendation that the proposal for the supply and installation of new dehumidifier units at those locations from Simcoe Refrigeration Inc. at the cost noted be approved, and that the mayor and clerk or their respective delegates be authorized to sign the contract agreement.
Councilor Beatty will move that, thank you. Councilor Niger will second. Discussion. Seen, call the question. All in favor? Most of any, that's unanimously carried.
Item 7.8 is the Stratford Live Music and Food Municipally Significant Event Request. And there is a motion that City Council hereby designates the 2026 event to be held June 19th and 20th in the Veterans Drive Fan Shell and surrounding green space on Veterans Drive as having municipal significance for the purpose of obtaining liquor licenses from the AGCO, subject to compliance with the city's municipal alcohol risk policy and required certificates of insurance being provided.
Moved by Councilor McCabe, seconded by Councilor Burback. Discussion. Councilor Wardole.
So chair, I have 14. Do we have any complaint from last year?
So through the chair, we had some comments that were made through some vendors on New York Street, which we will work with to alleviate some of the concerns that we had. Other than that, I would say that the event was well run and well received within the community, and there was no real major issues for us concerned complaints or any papers come forward to us. So no, it was pretty good.
Councilor McCabe.
Through the chair, I would just say that David Wilcox was fabulous last summer. It's a great event for the city of Stratford, and the attendance was amazing. It was great to see everyone out. And you need to do things that are not just high culture here. This is something that everyone enjoyed, and we should be doing it.
The other piece if I could add is the accessibility piece is improving, and this is one of the items that we have a grant moving forward for to even enhance the accessibility. So it's a community event for all. Thank you. Anything further? I'll call a question. All in favor? Opposed to any? That's unanimous and carried.
7.9 is a proclamation, and there is a motion that Stratford City Council hereby proclaims March 2026 as Amyloidosis Awareness Month in the City of Stratford to raise awareness of the amyloidosis diseases, including the hereditary and non-hereditary forms.
Moved by Councilor Burback, second by Councilor Wardole. Any discussion? See none, all in favor? Opposed to any? That's unanimous carried.
Item 8 is business for which previous notice has been given, and there's none noted. Moving to item 9, reports from standing committees. Item 9.1 is the report of the Social Services Committee, and there's 2 items listed as follows. Item 9.1.1 is the Employment Ontario Network update, and item 9.1.2 is the Housing Stability Bank program overview.
Councilor Henderson will move, seconded by Councilor Hunter. Any discussion? None noted, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimously carried.
Item 10 is notice of intent, and there's none noted. So moving to item 11, reading of the bylaws. There will be 7 bylaws listed for consideration as follows. Item 11.1 is the 2026 BIA budget. Item 11.2 is to award the proposal for the dehumidifier units. Item 11.3 is the appointment to the Energy and Environment Advisory Committee. Item 11.4 is the conveyance for the widening of Huron Street. Item 11.5 is the dedication of a part of Huron Street as public highway. And 11.6 and 7 relate to the agreements for household hazardous waste disposal. And then 11.8 is that item was deferred, this bylaw will be removed. And the bylaws 11.1 to 7 can be taken upon unanimous vote of council.
Thank you. Motion to take collectively. Councillor Beatty will move, seconded by Councillor McCabe. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried. Moving on to the first and second for these items. Moved by Councillor Hunter, seconded by Councillor Knight. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried. And a mover for third and final. Moved by Councillor Burbeck, seconded by Councillor Anderson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, unanimous and carried. Thank you.
Through your worship, item 12 is the consent agenda. Are there any items listed on the consent agenda to be considered by council?
Items, Councillor Bean, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to support the letter from the municipality of North Greenville, about the stop arm cameras being on buses. I think this is a safety issue, but I also was just at my children's bus stop a week or 2 ago, and a car, anyway, it was a not near miss with the child, but a near miss of blowing through. I just think it's a good tool to have, so I would like to.
Thank you. A seconder for that, Councillor Burbeck will second. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried.
Through your worship, item 13 is new business. Are there any new business items?
Councillor Bean, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to bring forward an idea. But first of all, I just want to acknowledge the work of the public works staff with snow removal, and I think they've done a fantastic job. I have no complaints about that at all. So the following motion that I would like to bring forward is more so because I've had so much community input that it's just an idea that I would like to refer to staff for when they do the review at the end of the season. So I'm just gonna read it what I have here. Okay, so I guess that was clear that I want to add one thing to be considered at the review. So when multiple people have commented in, especially seniors who are having problems that when the snow was cleared that we leave piles at the end of their driveway. And I know that there's another municipality that has a secondary piece of equipment that goes and cleans that out, and that I understand that would be staff time, equipment, and all that. So I just have another measure that I would like to have an idea that so when I think about it, even the other municipality, it takes up to 36 to 48 hours for that to happen. So it's not like an immediate fix. And by the time that would take place, most people that work have already cleared the end of their driveways and they're off to work, and that's it. So it leaves, I think, 2 sets of people that are a bit more vulnerable to it. One being senior citizens that can't physically remove it and it's not good for their health, and the second would be people with accessibility issues. I think that there are seniors who have the means to hire somebody to come clear the driveway, so I don't think that's a target of what my idea would be. So the thought I had was, could we have an application process where they would apply to have this service to go and clear the ends of their driveway, and instead of buying new equipment and hiring staff, could we contract that out to one of the private providers within the city? And it would be something that would be accessibility based, age based, and maybe income tested. I don't know how that could work. It's just, but I'd like to refer that motion to that would be included in the year-end review as a possible idea to meet the need of the most vulnerable. I don't know how many houses that would be. I have, if that feels clear, I can just read the potential motion, and if there's any questions to clarify what I mean, but the motion would be that council would refer to public works staff for inclusion in the year-end winter operations review, an evaluation of a potential application-based eligibility-driven end of driveway windrow clearing program for vulnerable residents. And that this review specifically examine the feasibility of providing this service for clearing for eligible seniors, residents with accessibility or medical limitations who meet an income criteria. And that staff assess the option of outsourcing this to local contractors who use specialized equipment, along with the associated costs and risks and operational considerations and program design elements. I don't know. Anyway, and that staff report back to council with findings and recommendations prior to the development of next year's operational plan and budget.
Thank you, the secretary, for that motion. Councilor Hunter will second. Discussion. It's a referral, so and it's going to come back. I don't know if you want to speak to we had spoken earlier about the idea of we will have a review at the end of the winter season. Did you want to speak to that at all?
Sure, through the mayor. Yeah, no, this is obviously a topic of discussion that we would review our services. And I already talked to our director around modernization. What can we do? What can we do? And again, it really comes down to service level at the end of the day, and this would just be a different service level. It's certainly different or directors working on options around some of these ideas. So we can provide that with the council.
Thank you. Council Burbank.
Through the chair. It just so happened that yesterday I was looking into what a circular materials is doing to help people that have accessibility needs to be able to move their carts, their cycling carts to the road. And this family member needs that, or else I have to do it. If they require a doctor's note. So that might be part of the consideration that staff would use as criteria that this person is physically unable to do it because of this illness. So that's what circular materials, if anyone wanted help with their resettlement, if you get a doctor's note, then you'll be able to get help with that service.
Any other comments? And it is a referral item. It'll come back as a fulsome review of winter operations. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried. And I'll just echo the comments made about our public works department has done amazing work this year, and I think as a city we should be proud of the work that that crew has done. So I'll echo that thought, Councilor Bean. Thank you. Any other new business? Seeing none, next item.
Your worship, item 14 is adjournment to standing committees, and there is a motion that the council meeting adjourn to convene in the standing committee as follows: to the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Committee, and then to reconvene in the council.
Moving for that. Moved by Councilor Niger, second by Councilor Henderson. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's unanimous and carried. Call Chair Burbank forward.
I'd like to call to order the Infrastructure, Transportation and Safety Committee. Item 2 is disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof. Seeing none. Item 3 are the subcommittee minutes, which will give you the discussion and background. Item 4 is delegations. We have none scheduled. Item 5 is the report of the manager of engineering. 5.1 is a neighborhood area speed limit pilot study. And we do have a staff and subcommittee recommendation. I do see Mr. Bachman waiting in the wings. So if you want to come on forward and give us a brief overview, perhaps.
Sure. Through the chair, the report for you today seeks the approval to implement the 40 km/h speed limit pilot program in North Stratford. 2 pilot areas were considered. However, staff recommend proceeding with the pilot in Northwest Stratford, bound by Huron Street to the south, Mornington to the east, McCarthy to the north, and Alone to the west. The area includes multiple schools, a daycare, The Cirque site covers approximately 29 kilometers of roadway, most of which are local streets. To implement the pilot program, we would need to install new gateway signage at 40 locations. The estimated material and labor cost of public works to install or required signage is approximately $11,600. Any future expansion beyond the pilot would require a phased approach or done by an external contractor if wanted to be done in a 1-year process.
Are there any questions or comments? Councilor McCabe.
I'd like to introduce the subcommittee recommendation. I'm very happy the report that was brought back and glad to see that something is being piloted so that we can see in the area of the city. I think is very well suited to give us some information to go forward.
Second by Melissa. Are there any other comments or questions? Councilor McCabe.
Yeah, thank you. I'm opposed to this, only because this is an issue that's been studied across many jurisdictions in North America. And the conclusions are consistent in every study that changing speed limits alone does not change driver behavior. Without enforcement or ideally some mitigating measures like road design changes, the fact is that people don't change their behavior just because the sign changed. So to me, it's a waste of time and money on both counts. And I can't support it for that reason.
Do that a second. Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Nudge.
The other question, through the chair, would Stratford Police Services be involved with monitoring this, the speed of those new areas?
Yep, through the chair. We had preliminary discussions with Stratford Services when this report initially came a couple of years ago, and they were on board supporters to increase enforcement or other presence in the pilot area.
Just to further on that. Yeah, as well as since the automated speed enforcement thing was no longer an option for us to consider further, the police chief and I had been in discussions about how we can ideally receive enhanced support services. So we're working together to try to increase and encourage that.
Councilor Lee.
Thank you to the chair. Two things. First, it being that there are a lot of people when the sign is lower, they do lower their speed, so that maybe would lower everybody behind them. So that's maybe one thing, because I would lower my speed if the sign was lower. But secondly, one of the boards that I sit on, there's a gentleman on it who was a police officer his whole life, and we brought this topic up, and I actually sat on the other side where I don't support it because I think it just costs money. It's not really going to do anything and all that. And he said he felt so strongly that it is absolutely my duty to make this happen because for safety. He said there isn't even a question in his mind. And the more I got talking to him about it, and actually the one delegation that came in shared. But anyway, mainly him. He just is saying it's such a small thing to do and it has such a big effect in his opinion. And so I have actually changed my mind and I would do it just based on that. And I think the option one, that area with the schools and everything, it makes a lot of sense. So
Councilor Wood.
Yeah, so do we have the camera in town somewhere?
I would say no, we don't have any cameras in town at the moment, but would you like to elaborate?
No, through the work or through the chair, sorry. We were looking into automated speed enforcement, which is the camera solution that was one provided. The province no longer permits that type of enforcement, so we are no longer proceeding with camera speed technology.
Councilor said.
Thank you. I do support staff subcommittee recommendations. I think anything we can do to reduce the risks of pedestrian, we should do, and there is a lot of empirical and peer-reviewed evidence of impacts. So fatality risk, the risk of being struck at 50 kilometers an hour is more than twice as high. The fatality risk is more than twice as high as being hit at 40 kilometers an hour, and more than 5 times higher than the risk of 30 kilometers an hour. So it's relatively inexpensive. I mean, even if not everybody is following it, I think if we can make an impact that makes people safer being doing active transportation and pedestrians, then in my opinion, we should do it, so.
Okay, Councilman.
I was just gonna say that, I'm not denying the physics, being hit by a vehicle at a higher speed is more dangerous. The issue is what's gonna change driver behavior. Because if the sign says 40, you get hit by a car going 60, is that safer? No, it's the speed drivers are actually going. And I have a list of 12 different studies that consistently show that changing the speed limit alone does not change driver behavior in a significant way. Even with enforcement, unless it's consistently applied, the impacts are minimal. So the issue is how do we change driver behavior? And the evidence says that lowering speed limits does not do that. And that's why I'm opposed.
Councilor Reedy.
So I'll state, I supported this subcommittee, but I also made the point that, House Hunter just made, that, this is all, it's a great exercise, but I don't believe that we're actually going to change people's behavior. We do have good roads coming up, and I also made it that, subcommittee that we should be making a delegation to the appropriate minister to oppose, the province's current position on having or not having automated cameras, because it is, as we've heard from Councilor Hunter, and I'll say it as well, you need to change behavior, and that only comes with repercussions. It's a sin tax. If you are speeding, you need to be known that you get a ticket in the mail and it says you own, and that will change behavior, because at some point it hurts your pocketbook, and that is a great way of changing how you look at speed signs. Just putting them up will not do that, and it's kind of a kumbaya. It makes you feel good, whatever, but it's not going to make the change that we're done.
Councilor McKay.
Through the chair, it is a pilot project. So it is gathering information. There is an ability to study this. The province has said that they are going to be providing some sort of funding to mitigate the issues that were lost when we couldn't use speed enforcement. Possibly that can be used in to work more fulsomely to get the kind of reductions that they're looking for. We don't have a perfect situation here because the province has decided that they don't want to do what is effective, so we can't really do much.
Councilor Henderson.
Well, I like the idea that the pilot is over all 4 seasons. And are we planning to put those speed belt things down on several streets or something to find out, how are we gonna get the information back that it actually worked?
So through the chair, we will install our speed cameras, we'll do pre and post investigation and during. So prior to implementing any speed changes, we'll first put them up, gather that information, and periodically put them up in the next spot, and then compare that in the program and see how successful the reduced speed limits were.
Councilor Nudge.
To the chair, I did support this subcommittee as well. As a pilot, I support it, but I did talk with a number of police officers who about this, and they said unless it's monitored and enforced through police, the driver behavior is minimal change. If there's police visibility, people slow down. When they're not, people go back to the other. But it'd be interesting to see what the study do.
Thank you. So now that everyone's made a comment, I have a comment or two to make. One thing we do have the agreement of police. So Jason Clark sits on our ATAC committee, and we've had some discussions about this at ATAC, and he does support this type of initiative. It does come from a Vision Zero type approach. It is part of our master transportation plan. And I mean, I do agree it needs to be paired with enforcement and infrastructure possibly. So if we implement it, we have the agreement already that the the Stratford Police will help with enforcement. So there's one hurdle crossed. And then if we have specific areas that we think are dangerous, then we have ways that we can change the infrastructure. Speed cameras is one, but there are other things that we can do, just traffic calming measures, they call them, as far as infrastructure, which can be put in specific instances, things like speed bumps and bump outs and other things. We've used them actually in our downtown core to help slow people down. There's visual things, there's even paint on the road that can help. So I wouldn't say that this program is a standalone, just change the signs. Education is also something that's emphasized. So I would encourage, as part of this pilot, that we do a big push with education as well, and just let people know. We've had a lot of people in this neighborhood in the 7 years that I've been on council come to council or write emails and say the speed on my street should be reduced. So in a lot of cases, we would go back to them and say, well, we are looking at reducing speeds on all the streets. So it's not that there isn't an appetite for it, there is. And people don't feel safe when the speed limit is 50 and someone's going 55. That feels way too fast. People feel unsafe as pedestrians, just coming, not even walking anywhere, just coming out of your house, having your children play on your lawn. We can't really ask the police to enforce somebody doing 55 and a 50, but we can have a penalty that's a little more substantial for somebody going 55 and a 40 area. So if we do reduce, then the enforcement side will add that incentive to change people's behavior. If you're going to get a ticket for going 15 over rather than 5 over, then I think the behavior will change. Anyway, it's my 2 cents. Councilor Hunter.
To that, I just wanted to add one comment that these studies also show that the traffic calming measures are the most effective, and not all of them have to be expensive. We could encourage more on-street parking. Even painting narrower lines can have some impact. So relatively inexpensive ways to change behavior. Enforcement is actually the number 2, and just changing the speed signs on their own is a distant third.
So I agree, but I do think that it's one of the measures that we need to sort of get us moving towards that safer neighborhood. Councilor. Sorry, Councilor McCabe.
I like that Councilor Dunker mentioned on the parking as a way for us to pay for our infrastructure and also slow people down in our neighborhood.
Yeah, and just to pick up on your conversations, there have been lots of studies. I look to Europe, particularly the Netherlands, of things they do that are quite unique to are cheap, and they're a form of a bump out just to slow people down. But it's about behavior, and behavior starts with us. So I challenge everyone in the room here tonight to drive the speed limit home, and you'll find that it'll be really, really difficult to drive the speed limit. But it has to start with somebody. It has to start with us. And I drive 40 and 40s and 50. My bride does not. I hope she's not listening. But it's got to start somewhere. And this is a place to start. Is it perfect? No. But certainly I like the idea of us doing something as opposed to saying we can't do anything. So thank you for this.
And I'm walking home, so I'll be glad if you're all driving speeding. Okay, any other comments before I call the question? Councilor Hudson.
Just a comment, I'm just curious why we just didn't pick a ward, let's say Avon Ward. And then it's, Mornington Street to Alone from, I can't think of what the name of that street is, not going to be in that.
No, 13.
What is it? Maybe the director can.
Yeah, just two real reasons, Chair. Councilor McCabe requests that this area be considered for all the reasons mentioned in the report.
Oh.
As well as we've asked to deal with the staff capacity, so it has to be a whole ward is beyond what works ability a given year.
Okay.
It needs to be a small area for them to included our work.
And thank you.
And as I pointed out at subcommittee, it's also within that area, we've had 3 fatalities in Stratford in the past several years. 2 of them have been in that area. Okay, if there's no further comment, I will call the question. All in favor? Those opposed? That carries. Thank you. Item 6 is for the information of the committee. 6.1 is the department update. And 6.2 is the advisory committee and outside board minutes. Item 7 is adjournment. Motion, Councilor McCabe will move, Councilor Manager second, all in favor? Carries.
Thank you, Chair Hurryback. We'll reconvene, Madam Clerk.
Through your worship, returning to your regular council agenda, item 15 is council reconvene. Item 15.1, are there any declarations made at standing committee to be restated at the reconvened portion?
Well noted.
Item 15.2 is the confirmatory bylaw, requires first and second reading and third and final reading.
Removal for first and second. Councilor Dean will move, second by Councilor Hunter. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed of any, that's unanimously carried. And removal for third and final, moved by Councilor Seven, second by Councilor Niger. All in favor? Opposed of any? And that's unanimous and carried. And final item of the evening, and I want to thank staff and council and public for being here this evening. Motion to adjourn, moved by Councilor Burback, second by Councilor Niger. All in favor? Opposed of any? That's unanimous and that's carried. Thank you.